Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Whilst myself, Henry Amney, former CEO of ClusterSeven, and Natalie, who a lot of you probably spend most of the time talking to, helps with customer success for ClusterSeven. With people doing, well, actually, Nat's going to be doing most of the talking today. I'm just going to introduce this. There are a number of people in the room here, so we ask you to put questions during the session into the chat, which we'll answer as we go along. There will be a chance for some Q&A at the end as well, but rather than people jumping in during the session, we'd like to get through it first. But please do put questions in the chat, and if we think they're relevant, we will try and answer them as we go along. As we said earlier, yes, the session is being recorded. We'll send the recording out after this, along with the slides that we're sharing. And then, as I said, there will be documentation on some of the features and draft data sheets for version 6 of IMS and 13 of ESM put on the Success Center. So that's the session today. So if we just go to the next slide, then the agenda for today is really to walk through, as I say, the key features of ESM 13, IMS 6, what's in there, what we see as the key benefits, timeline for the release, and where you can leave the feedback, and then the most important thing I'm trying to get quickly so we give plenty of time for that to actually show you the just one other sort of thing before I get to that is we will be running a user forum in the UK in April. It's going to be the 24th for a cocktail reception, and then on the 25th of April, Thursday the 25th as well. You will start getting details from next week, but just wanted to sort of give you a sneak preview of that. We only just locked the dates in yesterday. So again, another opportunity to meet each other and ask questions of some of the people who will be around the table here talking about this release today. So on to the main event. So what's in ESM 13 and IMS 6? I mean, there are a lot, as I say, there are a lot more features than we're going to be able to demonstrate today. And to the point made earlier, yes, there will be a number of bug fixes as well included, as always, within the product. I guess the three key things that Nat is going to be demonstrating today, first is, and we talked about this at the user forum earlier this year, is the deeper integration between ESM and IMS. So the ability to get information from ESM, surface up into IMS, but also, and we'll come on to this, ability to take that straight into other systems as well. Enhancements of the audit history, as you know, in the last release of IMS, we made it easier to get the audit history out. Now you're able to do to get that up for multiple records. And then in ESM, the extension of the ability to have quarantine files and SharePoint online. Other features that we won't be demonstrating today, but are in the release. So the ability to create linked risk checks in the web, create them, schedule them, and obviously review them. Exporting of tasks from IMS, and then improvements to the views in IMS. So removing some of the system fields that were by default in there, and the ability to actually include some other ones that you weren't able to, and other people were asking for. As always with major releases, there are technical updates. So two key ones here, support for SQL 2022 and support for Excel 21. But also for those who have been asking for this, quite a few these days, removal of the prerequisites, excuse me, for having report viewer 2012 and SQL XML on the application server. So again, those are deprecated functions for Microsoft, and they're no longer required for ESM 13. I know, as I say, I know certainly report viewer 2012 was one thing that some people were interested in. As I say, the draft data sheets and documentation, certainly on the first piece, which is quite extensive, will be available for people to review.
Want to call already?
Sorry, can people go on mute if that's all right? I think that's you, Colin. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. In terms of the benefits, let's say, I mean, the reality is, as we say, the feedback we've got from many people is, the majority of your users use IMS as their sort of I guess the first point they go into looking at information in ClusterSeven, and actually most of the users spend most of their life there. And it'd be great if we could have more information, be able to use the more advanced and flexible workflows within IMS, but being able to pull some of that ESM information in. So bringing all of that information in, allowing, as Nat will show you, to be able to bring information into IMS, to be able to kick off workflows, to look at reporting, to be able to take some of the basic functions, or be able to control some of the basic functions of ESM through IMS is made a lot easier now. The reality is we also are aware, and this almost goes back to when I first started at ClusterSeven, taking information not into IMS but into other systems. So I'm reminded of there was a CFO's dashboard which had a simple traffic light which was driven by ClusterSeven, which we created a custom integration for. But God forbid it ever went from green to red, because that meant the SOX controls were failing, and that was literally, we didn't want, if any workbook had a change that wasn't signed off for 5 working days, then that would turn that traffic light from green to red. So whilst what Nat will show you today is the ability to take information, and we've standardized the information that you can take from ESM up into IMS, you can also we're using a thing called webhooks. You can also take that into other systems. I think it's also worth saying we have built a standard set of fields that we picked, and we took feedback from the user groups earlier this year in terms of what are the key information that people thought that would be useful from ESM to IMS. If it doesn't exist in the standard, like you did with custom report, people are familiar with custom reports, we have the ability then to create you a custom workbook, which would be a stored procedure that would allow you to take information from ESM and put it into IMS or into a third-party system. So we really see this as a way of enabling a lot more collaboration, or I guess give more people access to the information in ESM in a consumable fashion, because not many of our users go into ESM on a day-to-day basis. The reporting is separated, so it's unifying that reporting, bringing the key information up into IMS. ESM is still the place where you will do the reviews and approvals of those files, but allowing other people to get, the wider community to get access to that information. So that's what Nat's going to show you. Just in terms of timelines, the release will be available in early January. So what we're asking today is, please, we'll send this deck out. There is a link to a form. Once if you can provide feedback on the functionality you've got, that'd be great. We are also, for anybody who is interested, we are looking to run an alpha program. So we have a mechanism which is called SkyTap, which can give you access to effectively the environment or a copy of the environment Nat's going to show today, which will allow you to test the system and give us more detailed feedback over and above what you see in the demo today. Given the release is coming out in January, we would need people who are committed to be able to do that in the next couple of weeks and be able to provide that back. We're really going to probably limit it to the first 3 or 4 people that are able to, are interested in doing that, so we're not overwhelmed. And also we would expect people who are doing that to have good knowledge of the admin of IMS and or ESM. So the test here is Nat, obviously a whiz as a customer success person on C7, was able to take the documentation engineering gave, upgrade the software, and to be able to do the demo today. So if you're familiar with it, it's not a big ask, but the idea is we're not going to be hand-holding people through that sort of alpha program. So if you are interested, there is an area in the form for you to express your interest. I think that was it. If there's nothing else, I think we'll hand over to Nat to get straight into the demo.
Lovely. Thank you, Henry. So just bear with me just whilst let me come out of that and just let me switch to the environment I'm going to be using for the demo. Okay. Right, so basically I'm going to be going through the points that Henry raised during the introduction. And we're going to start off, and probably the main bulk of the demo is going to be around the integration or the enhanced integration between IMS and ESM. So as Henry was saying, what you get is you get information about your linked ESM files in IMS. So what happens is when you upgrade to IMS 6 and ESM 13, these automatic webhooks are created. I'm not going to go into like the technical details of it, but essentially it's creating that integration between the two products. That's happening automatically because these are out-of-the-box webhooks. And that means you then automatically have this additional information available in IMS. So what I've done in my demo environment, I've got a view group called ESM, and I've got various different views that I've created based on the information that I'm interested in, or maybe the areas that are most important to me. So, for example, I've got a view that will show me any files that are linked to records in IMS where the password processing has failed. So perhaps that's something that's of interest to me. Other examples, just generally wanting to understand files that have failed to process. Any files that have gone into a quarantine state, so you can go and fix those and get those processing again. Something else that could be important is perhaps understanding that you've got files in ESM that have a consolidation pattern, but actually those files aren't updating. I guess if you have a consolidation pattern, you would be expecting the file to be updating. Maybe the year would be changing, the month, the day. And so again, by having this additional information in IMS, you can create a filtered view to understand, if those files aren't being updated on the basis that you're expecting. And other things like understanding sort of a sign-off summary. I'll come and take a quick look at this one actually before we go back to the password one. But this, for example, can show you that, for this file here, the latest status is that the review for the latest time point has been completed, but actually there were 2 other time points that still haven't had their review completed. So I guess it's about understanding, okay, so I can see that the file has had its most recent time point checked and validated, but maybe there's some historical ones that are still waiting. So it's giving you that summary and that roll-up information. So let me just come back because I'm going to do a lot of this for my failing password. So if I just edit this view, what you will see is if I come down, there's now lots more columns available for me to add to the view. And quite usefully, any information that comes from ESM has ESM in brackets after it. So that's nice and useful. And then you can add any of those columns that are kind of pertinent to the view that you're setting up into your selected columns. But then what you can also do with those fields is use them for your filtering. So in my example here, where I'm interested in files where the ESM has been unable to process it because there's a problem with the password, you can see that I've used the field called latest status ESM, and I've put that where that equals unprotection failure. I might put where there's been an error. So you've got all of that information available to give you your kind of slice and dice of the information. Something that Henry did touch on, but just to reiterate, in like previous versions of IMS, there were some columns that had to be on the view. You do need to have at least record ID or record name, but all other columns are optional. So I think I had a quick look at this. So I think it's things like last updated and linked records. They had to be on the view. And of course, they would take up a bit of space, and they might not be fields that you were particularly interested in. So you don't need to have those on the view anymore. And also more fields are available to be put on the view, and some system properties that previously you couldn't include on the view. So a couple of examples are, created on, so when was the IMS record created, who was it created by, the document count. So those kind of properties where the information was in the system, but it just wasn't made visible, you can now add those into your view. Let me just go back to my view. So let's just stick with this one here. So if I come in and actually have a look at this record, what we will see is that if there is a linked ESM record, the overview page has been updated to include a section called content management. So basically, the information that has come over from ESM about the file is all visible on the overview page. So you could, for example, from here, come and see if it's been quarantined. You can understand a bit about the file. Does it have protection on it? How many worksheets? Are there any reviews pending for it? So that is kind of like a default view. So that comes on the overview page. I think I'm also correct in saying is if you wanted some of this information on some of the sort of custom pages that you create, then you can use sort of calculated indicators to make that information visible elsewhere, if perhaps it would be useful on one of the other pages to be able to see a little bit of information about the ESM file. Also, as part of this work, we've done some enhancements around the content management admin page. So let me come to that on this record. So you've still got your sync history. So that was already there. And you still, let me just scroll back up, and you still have the ability to force a sync. So basically, if some of the attributes were to change in IMS and you wanted to force that sync, maybe rather than waiting for it to run, you still have the ability to do that. But now there's this extra button that will also do the sync from ESM into IMS. So you can force that sync if you needed to. We've also got some details about the latest sort of, or the synchronization process and the current status. And then also from here, we have the ability to navigate to this record, to this file in ESM. And there's basically two options. I guess these are perhaps the most useful and make the most sense. So you can go directly to the timeline page. So I can get directly to the timeline from that content management admin screen in IMS. Or I can also go to what we call the configuration page. I also call it like the landing page. So here's the, all that sort of information about the file. So I can quickly get to it from IMS. Let me just go back here. So, and and you still have the ability from within the record itself to get to the file. But what is really good is that now also on the view, if you add the column called Content Management ID, there's the ID of the linked file, and I can click on it and I can be taken straight to the file from the view. So I guess we're saving you a few clicks there. You don't need to go down into the record itself to then be able to get to the file. And of course, then you can see at a glance, what the file ID is for the linked file. So something else that you can then leverage now in IMS by having this information in so having this ESM information in IMS is the workflow capability that you have in IMS. So in this example here, where a file has failed to process because there's a problem with the password, see, you can use the workflow to kick off a task to the owner of the file to let them know that there's a problem and for them to go and sort of fix it, and maybe the passwords change and it needs updating. So we can see here that I've got a task which is it's off the side, but that's assigned to me as the owner of the file, that I need to go in and check the password. So if we have just a very quick look at the workflow design for this one. So with IMS 6, for those of you who are familiar with building out the workflows, there's various, I guess, initiation criteria. So what is it about the record that will kick off the workflow? And there's a new one here called Record Integration Update Initiation. But that basically means, based on the value of one of the fields from ESM, I want you to kick off this workflow. And essentially what I've got is a little bit of JavaScript that's basically looking at the ESM latest status field. And if that field says unprotection failure, it will then kick off, this workflow. So that is allowing you, as I said, you're getting information from ESM into IMS, and that's then allowing you to kick off workflows and assign tasks to people so they can resolve the issues with the files in ESM. And I think that's important because it can take away, I guess, some of the overhead on maybe the central team that's looking after the system and devolving some of that troubleshooting to the owners. Because in this example here, as perhaps the person responsible for administering ClusterSeven, you won't necessarily know what the password is for that file. So rather than, I guess, acting as the middle person that sort of then has to go to the owner to get them to update it, it's around, okay, let's tell the owner directly, they can come in, they can fix the file, and then it will carry on processing. So it's kind of automating as many sort of administrative tasks as possible. So let me just come back here. So I'm just going to change to my ESM. So I've got a view which shows me all of my records in IMS that have a linked file in ESM. And you can see that I've pulled out a few columns. So I've got like the latest status, and I've also got things like the latest review status and latest approval status. So what I just want to show is you can see these fields updating as things happen in ESM. So I'm just going to make sure that I go to the right file. Let's go to this one. Okay, and hopefully I should be able to do a review. Okay. So I've gone straight to the file from IMS. I'm responsible for doing the review. I've done my review and I complete it. And then if I come back to IMS, which is 1906, let me just review that. Sorry, my screen's a little small, but we can now see it has updated from pending to complete because I completed that review in ESM. So that really was what I wanted to show you in terms of the out-of-the-box integration with the out-of-the-box webhooks that you can use to transfer, to have the data going from ESM to IMS. As Henry was saying at the beginning, you can also create custom webhooks, which, so if these webhooks don't quite meet what you need, you can create custom webhooks. I'm probably going to hand over to Henry
Yeah,
at that
I
point.
was going to say, I mean, as I said earlier in the introduction, if we think in terms of old ESM, we had some standard reports, people had custom reports. It's effectively the same thing. It's creating a query in, but the advantage now is you can pull that information into IMS, you can format the reporting, and obviously with that available, then that can be pulled straight through into any other reporting solution that you have, whether it's Power BI, whatever it may be. I think the other thing, again, to reiterate, whilst we are demonstrating the information surfacing from ESM up into IMS, there is no reason. I think those of you who were on session we were talking about Power BI about 6 to 8 weeks ago, someone mentioned consolidation reporting from ClusterSeven and other GRC solutions to give an overview of the internal controls. Again, this would allow you to take more detailed information from ESM and be able to pull that straight into that reporting, whatever reporting layer it may be, whatever other system it may be. So it does give you a lot more flexibility now to subscribe to that information that's in ESM and not just IMS. So cool. I think
are there, so if we just take a sort of, I guess, a natural break there before we move on to the next few topics, any questions that we could answer at this stage? Has anything come in, Henry?
No, hang on. Will users see much of this, or is it mainly admins who will have the extra new functions? So I guess it depends. The reality is by default, the information is available. Depending on what permissions you give to people to be able to create views and stuff, if they have got the ability to create views, then they will be able to create views with that additional information. Yes. So again, it's all down to permission. This is in effect giving you more information that you can include on those views and or include in workflows. If you allow your users to create workflows and stuff, then in effect it's just increasing that information that is available. It's the only question I've got thus far. So keep putting the questions in, and if anybody has any, otherwise, Nat, let's move on to.
Okay. So the next thing we just wanted to look at is around the business unit audit trail, which is something that we added based on an idea that was added to the ideas portal. Okay. So let me go to a view that I had created called all applications. So these are all of the application type records under my GRC support and services business unit. So as you know, you have the audit trail at an individual record level. But what we've done is at the BU level, we've also given you the ability to have like an overarching audit trail, so understand the changes that have been made across the business unit. And you get to that from the view. So I guess you create a view based on the records that you're interested in running the audit against. And now we've got our audit history. So by default, it will show the last 30 days worth of audits. But you've got the filter option here, so you can put a particular date range in. Maybe you're interested in particular types of changes. Maybe you're interested in changes that have been made to a particular property or set of properties. Or maybe what you're interested in is understanding, all of the changes that have been made, by a particular person. And the audit trail can be exported. There is a configurable limit. So basically, out of the box, it will only let you export up to 90 days worth of information. So I've now got the ability to export. But that is a configurable option, so that can be changed. So if you wanted that to be more or less, I guess the only thing to think about is, you know, if you've got lots of records with lots of attributes that are changing, you know, you probably don't want to have a massive export to do there. So that's, you know, that's something just to bear in mind. But you can absolutely get the audit out, which I guess is around getting data out of the system more easily, you know, across a broader set of records. So rather than having to go to individual records, you can look across the business unit and get that audit information. And as I said, this was added in response to an idea that was voted on in the ideas portal. One other thing to mention in IMS, so let me just come back to, I come to my tasks. So again, I think this is something that was added in response to an idea. So now from the tasks page, you can export. So it's just exporting out to Excel. Just one thing to bear in mind is that the export will just export all the open tasks that you've got. And that's the view I think that you default to when you go to the tasks page. It's all of your open tasks. But again, you can export it and get that information out easily if you want to. So that is IMS and the sort of the main enhancements that we wanted to show. Just one thing that we did want to highlight in ESM, which Henry said, which was around the SharePoint quarantined files. So if let me come here. Let me just get to the right page. Bear with me 1 second. Trying to remember which file it was. Sorry, bear with me. Yeah, so we can see here that I've got a file that was quarantined. It is, that is a SharePoint file that I added to the system. So if I go to the management console, which I said I've got my quarantine, we can now see that as well as showing files that are quarantined on the file server, we've also got a SharePoint online file that has quarantined, I think because I changed the password on it and didn't update it in ESM. And of course, it processed it, you know, 3 times, or based on whatever I had the limit set to, kept on failing. So therefore, it has quarantined it. And also, it would then show it in the quarantine files report. So let me come to reporting. There we go. Thank you. And that's going to show me. So I'm just looking at the last 7 days, and that then shows me that I've got a file from SharePoint Online that has been quarantined. So, you know, that's an enhancement that we've made, you know, so that it matches the way that file server files are being processed, and also means that you're not sort of clogging up your system if ESM is constantly trying to process files on SharePoint that it can no longer process, can go into quarantine, and you can go through your normal process of fixing it and then bringing it out of quarantine and processing it when it can actually be processed. So in terms of the demo, that was everything I was going to show. I guess at this point, we'll open it up for any questions.
Yes, has anybody got any questions? You can come off mute and ask away. Please do.
Hi, Natalie and Henry. It's Rachel Marion from Santander. Quick question for you. Just looking at your data sheet for ESM 13, just wanted to confirm we're not using the MS report viewer for that module.
Yes, yeah. So I confirmed that up front. So yeah, the report the report viewer and report viewer and was it the SQL XML on the application server is no longer needed.
Okay, perfect.
I know that was a key one for you, Rachel.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, we will, as I say, we will share the recording, the slides. As I say, the documentation will be loaded up onto Sports Centre. I'd say within the slides is that feedback form. If you could fill that in, and if anybody is interested in testing this over the next couple of weeks and give us more detailed feedback, we would welcome that. So one last call. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.